The morning frost clung to the metal surfaces of Fort Blackstone's armored vehicle depot like a stubborn reminder that winter wasn't finished with them yet. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez wiped her hands on an oil-stained rag and watched her breath. Formed small clouds in the cold air as she approached the maintenance bay that had become both her workplace and her prison. The massive M1A2 Abrams tank sat silent and imposing in Bay 7, its 68-ton bulk casting shadows across the concrete floor like a sleeping giant that had forgotten how to wake up. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. For 3 weeks, the tank had been the bane of the 3rd Armored Division's maintenance crew, refusing every attempt to restore its main systems to operational status. What should have been a routine repair had evolved into a mechanical nightmare that had stumped the base's most experienced technicians, turned into a career-threatening crisis for the maintenance chief, and somehow become Elena's daily reminder that she would never be anything more than the woman who cleaned tools and fetched parts for the real mechanics. The irony wasn't lost on her that she could diagnose the problem in her sleep, had known the solution since the first day the tank rolled into the bay with its mysterious electrical failures and hydraulic inconsistencies. Yet every attempt to share her insights had been met with condescending smiles, dismissive waves, and the kind of patient explanations typically reserved for children who had wandered into adult conversations. The other mechanics had made it abundantly clear that her job was to support their work, not to think for herself, and certainly not to offer suggestions that might imply their expertise was somehow insufficient. Elena had learned long ago that being the only woman in the motor pool meant navigating a landscape where every conversation felt like a test she was destined to fail, where her technical knowledge was viewed as surprising rather than valuable, and where her presence was tolerated as long as she remained invisible. She had entered the Army with dreams of becoming a master mechanic, had graduated at the top of her technical training class, and had spent the last 8 years watching less qualified soldiers receive promotions and recognition while she remained stuck in support roles that never allowed her to demonstrate her true capabilities. The sound of boots on concrete announced the arrival of Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, the bay's lead mechanic and Elena's most vocal critic. Webb had made it his personal mission to ensure Elena understood her place in the hierarchy, which he believed was somewhere between the tool cabinet and the coffee machine. His approach to management seemed to involve equal parts condescension and casual cruelty, delivered with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes and words that carried just enough plausible deniability to avoid official complaints. "Morning, Vasquez," Webb called out as he surveyed the tank with the expression of a man contemplating his own professional demise. "Hope you've got the coffee ready, because it's going to be another long day with this metal monster. Maybe today you can actually help instead of standing around looking confused." His laughter carried the sharp edge of someone who found genuine humor in other people's discomfort, and Elena felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came with swallowing responses that would only make her situation worse. Behind Webb came the rest of the morning crew, Specialist Danny Rodriguez and Corporal Jake Morrison, both solid mechanics in their own right, but followers by nature, who took their cues from Webb's treatment of Elena. Rodriguez had the decency to look uncomfortable when Webb's comments crossed the line into obvious hostility, but Morrison seemed to enjoy the show, treating Elena's daily humiliation as entertainment that made the tedious work more bearable. "Any word from headquarters about the deadline?" Rodriguez asked, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood that careers hung in the balance. The tank had been promised to the training squadron for a major exercise that was now less than 48 hours away, and the failure to deliver operational equipment would reflect poorly on everyone involved, though Elena knew she would somehow bear a disproportionate share of the blame, despite having no authority to actually work on the repairs. Webb kicked at the tank's track with the frustrated energy of a man who had run out of ideas but refused to admit defeat. Colonel Martinez is breathing down Chief Thompson's neck. Thompson's breathing down mine, and if we don't figure this thing out soon, we're all going to be explaining to some very unhappy people why a $250,000 tank is sitting here like an expensive paperweight. He turned to Elena with the kind of look that suggested she had personally caused every problem in his life. Think you can manage to keep the tools organized while the real mechanics do actual work? Elena nodded silently, biting back the observation that the real mechanics had been doing actual work for 3 weeks with nothing to show for it, except a growing pile of replaced parts and a mounting sense of desperation. She had watched them chase symptoms instead of causes, replace components that were functioning perfectly, and ignore the obvious signs that pointed to a problem so simple it was almost embarrassing. The tank's issues stemmed from a cascade failure in the electrical distribution system, a problem she had seen before and knew how to fix. But suggesting such a thing would only invite more ridicule and cement her reputation as someone who didn't understand her limitations. The morning routine began with the same ritual that had played out for weeks. The mechanics gathering around the tank like doctors examining a terminal patient, discussing possibilities that had already been explored, debating solutions that had already failed, and carefully avoiding any acknowledgement that their expertise might be insufficient for the task at hand. Elena moved through her assigned duties with practiced efficiency, organizing tools that were already organized, cleaning equipment that was already clean, and maintaining the pretense that her presence served some meaningful purpose, beyond providing a target for frustration and condescension. Webb opened the tank's engine compartment with the reverent care of someone handling a religious artifact, his movements deliberate and cautious despite his obvious familiarity with the machinery. The Abrams tank represented the pinnacle of American armored technology, a complex integration of mechanical, electrical, and hydraulic systems that required both theoretical knowledge and practical experience to maintain properly. Elena had studied every manual, memorized every schematic, and understood the intricate relationships between components that made the massive machine function as a cohesive unit. "Rodriguez, start with the power distribution panel," Webb instructed, his voice carrying the authority of someone who believed confidence could substitute for competence. "Morrison, check the hydraulic pressure readings again. Maybe we missed something yesterday." The two soldiers moved to their assigned tasks with the mechanical precision of people following orders they didn't fully understand. Their movements, lacking the intuitive understanding that separated true mechanics from parts replacers. Elena positioned herself near the tool cabinet, where she could observe the diagnostic process without being accused of interfering or abandoning her assigned duties. From her vantage point, she could see the readings on the diagnostic computer, watch the mechanics test circuits and systems, and feel her frustration build as they methodically ignored the evidence that would lead them to the actual problem. The tank's electrical system was experiencing intermittent failures that created cascading effects throughout the vehicle's other systems, but the pattern was so subtle that it required understanding the relationships between components rather than just following troubleshooting trees. "Voltage looks normal on the main bus," Rodriguez reported, his voice carrying the confusion of someone who expected abnormal readings to explain abnormal behavior. "All the fuses are good, grounds are clean, and the alternator is putting out correct amperage." He paused, studying the multimeter with the expression of someone hoping the numbers would somehow change if he looked at them long enough. Morrison's voice echoed from the hydraulic system housing. "Pressure readings are within spec when the system's static, but we're still getting those random fluctuations under load. It's like something's drawing power inconsistently, but I can't find any correlation with the electrical readings." His frustration was obvious, the tone of someone who had checked the same systems dozens of times with identical results. Elena knew exactly what they were missing because she had identified the problem during the tank's first hour in the bay. had traced the symptoms to their source through careful observation and logical deduction, and had been politely dismissed when she attempted to share her findings. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The tank's main electrical distribution box had a hairline crack in one of the bus bars, invisible to casual inspection, but sufficient to create intermittent, high-resistance connections that affected downstream systems in unpredictable ways. The crack was so small that it didn't show up on standard electrical tests, but it explained every symptom the tank was exhibiting. Webb climbed down from the tank's turret with the expression of someone who had just completed another futile exercise in systematic confusion. His uniform was already stained with hydraulic fluid and grease despite the early hour, and his movements carried the frustrated energy of someone running out of both time and options. "Same story as yesterday and the day before," he announced to the group. "Everything tests good individually, but the system won't function as a unit. It's like the tank is possessed by some kind of electrical ghost. Maybe we should call in a specialist from depot maintenance," Rodriguez suggested tentatively, the words carrying the weight of someone admitting defeat. "This might be beyond our capability level." The suggestion hung in the air like an admission of professional inadequacy, and Elena could see Webb's jaw tighten with the kind of anger that came from being forced to acknowledge limitations. Morrison laughed with the bitter humor of someone who had given up hope. "Sure, let's wait another week for some expert to come tell us what we already know, which is that this tank is cursed. Maybe they'll have some magic fairy dust that makes electrical systems work the way they're supposed to." His sarcasm carried an edge of genuine despair, the tone of someone who understood that failure would have consequences for everyone involved. Elena felt the familiar internal debate that had become her daily companion, the conflict between her desire to help and her knowledge that offering assistance would only invite ridicule and resentment. She had learned through painful experience that being right was often worse than being silent, that solving problems others couldn't solve was viewed as showing off rather than contributing, and that her gender made every interaction a potential minefield of wounded egos and defensive reactions. The morning wore on with the same pattern that had defined the previous weeks, the mechanics cycling through diagnostic procedures they had already completed, replacing parts that weren't broken and growing increasingly frustrated with a problem that seemed to mock their expertise. Elena watched Webb's confidence erode with each failed attempt, saw Rodriguez's methodical approach give way to desperate improvisation, and observed Morrison's humor turn darker as the reality of their situation became impossible to ignore. Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Thompson arrived just before lunch with the expression of someone bearing bad news. Thompson was a career mechanic who had earned her position through competence and determination, but even her considerable skills seemed insufficient for the political pressures surrounding the tank's repair. Elena respected Thompson's technical knowledge and had hoped the chief might be more receptive to input from subordinates, but the hierarchical nature of military maintenance made such conversations difficult, regardless of anyone's intentions. "Gentlemen," Thompson began, her voice carrying the formality that preceded important announcements, "I've just come from a meeting with Colonel Martinez and the training squadron commander. The exercise deadline is firm, no extensions, no excuses. We have until tomorrow morning to deliver a fully operational tank, or we'll be explaining to some very senior people why our maintenance capabilities aren't adequate for mission requirements." Webb's face flushed with the kind of anger that came from being trapped between impossible expectations and intractable problems. "Chief, we've tried everything in the technical manuals and half the things that aren't. This tank has some kind of intermittent electrical problem that doesn't show up on any of our diagnostic equipment. It's not a matter of competence or effort. It's a matter of dealing with something we've never seen before." Thompson nodded with the understanding of someone who had faced similar challenges throughout her career. "I understand the technical difficulties, Sergeant Webb, but understanding doesn't change the deadline. The colonel was very clear that mission requirements take precedence over technical excuses. She paused, looking around the bay with the expression of someone searching for solutions that might not exist. Is there anything else we can try? Any approach we haven't considered? Elena felt her heart rate increase as the conversation moved in a direction that might create an opportunity for her to contribute. She had watched the discussion with growing hope that someone might ask the right question, might create an opening for her to share what she knew without appearing to challenge established authority. The moment felt fragile, balanced on the edge between possibility and the familiar disappointment of being overlooked. Morrison spoke up with the desperation of someone grasping for any alternative to failure. Maybe we could swap out the entire electrical system from one of the tanks in deadline storage. It would be a massive job, but if the problem really is electrical, it might work. The suggestion carried the weight of someone willing to attempt the nearly impossible rather than admit defeat. Rodriguez shook his head with the authority of someone who had already considered the option. Those tanks are down for transmission problems, but their electrical systems have been sitting without power for months. We'd be trading one unknown problem for another, and we don't have time to refurbish a complete electrical system, even if it would work. Webb kicked at the concrete floor with the frustrated energy of someone who had run out of both ideas and patience. We could try calling manufacturer support, see if they've seen anything like this before. It's a long shot, but maybe there's some known issue that isn't in the technical documentation. His voice carried the tone of someone suggesting options he didn't believe would succeed. Elena took a deep breath and made a decision that would either vindicate years of silent observation or confirm her colleague's assessment of her limitations. "Chief Thompson," she said, her voice carrying more confidence than she felt, "I might have an idea about what's causing the problem." The words seemed to hang in the air like a challenge, and she felt every eye in the bay focus on her with expressions ranging from surprise to barely concealed annoyance. Webb's response was immediate and predictable. "Vasquez, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is a complex technical problem that requires actual diagnostic experience. Maybe you should focus on keeping the workspace clean and let the qualified mechanics handle the troubleshooting." His tone carried the patient condescension of someone explaining obvious facts to a slow student. Thompson held up a hand to silence Webb's dismissal, her expression thoughtful rather than dismissive. "What kind of idea, Vasquez? At this point, I'm willing to listen to any suggestion that might help us solve this problem." Her voice carried the authority of someone who understood that good ideas could come from unexpected sources, and Elena felt a surge of hope that someone might finally take her seriously. Elena moved closer to the tank, her hands already reaching for the electrical schematic she had memorized weeks ago. The symptoms suggest an intermittent high-resistance connection in the main electrical distribution system. All the individual components test good because they are good, but there's a failure point that only affects the system under load. She paused, watching for signs of dismissal or ridicule, but Thompson's expression remained attentive. Morrison laughed with the kind of humor that masked uncertainty. "We've tested every connection in the electrical system twice. If there was a high-resistance problem, we would have found it with the standard diagnostic procedures." His confidence carried the weight of someone defending established methodology against unproven theories. Elena pressed forward despite the skepticism. "Not if the resistance is intermittent and caused by a structural failure rather than a connection problem. A hairline crack in one of the bus bars would create exactly the symptoms we're seeing. But it wouldn't show up on standard electrical tests because the crack would close under the pressure of the test probes." Webb's expression shifted from condescension to active annoyance. "Vasquez, you're describing a failure mode that would be obvious to anyone with proper training. If there was a cracked bus bar, it would show obvious signs of arcing, discoloration, or thermal damage. We've inspected every component in the electrical distribution box multiple times. Elena felt her confidence waver, but forced herself to continue. Not necessarily. A stress crack from vibration or thermal cycling might not show obvious visual signs, especially if it's in a location that doesn't carry heavy current loads under normal conditions. But when the system draws power for hydraulic operations or turret movement, the increased current would cause the crack to open slightly, creating the intermittent problems we're experiencing. Thompson studied Elena with the expression of someone reevaluating long-held assumptions. You're suggesting we look for a crack that might not be visible during normal inspection, but would affect system performance under load. That's an interesting theory, but how would we test it without disassembling the entire electrical distribution system? Elena had been hoping someone would ask that question, had spent weeks thinking about how to prove her theory without the authority to actually implement her ideas. We could use thermal imaging to look for hot spots in the electrical distribution box while the system is under load. A high-resistance connection would show up as a temperature differential that wouldn't be visible any other way. Webb shook his head with the certainty of someone who believed experience trumped theory. Thermal imaging equipment requires specialized training and certification to operate safely around high-voltage systems. Even if your theory was correct, which it isn't, we don't have the resources or expertise to implement your suggestion safely. Elena felt the familiar disappointment of being dismissed before her ideas could be properly evaluated, but Thompson's expression suggested the conversation wasn't over. The chief warrant officer studied the tank with the thoughtful expression of someone weighing risks against potential benefits, calculating the cost of failure against the possibility of an unconventional solution. Vasquez, Thompson said finally, her voice carrying the authority of someone making a command decision. I want you to explain your theory in detail, step by step, so I can understand exactly what you think is happening and how you propose to test it. If you're wrong, we've lost maybe an hour of time we can't afford to lose. If you're right, you might have just solved a problem that's been stumping experienced mechanics for 3 weeks. Elena felt her heart race as she realized she was finally being given the opportunity she had been waiting for, the chance to prove that her ideas had value beyond keeping tools organized and workspace clean. The moment felt both exhilarating and terrifying, balanced on the edge between vindication and humiliation, with no middle ground for partial success. Webb's expression darkened with the kind of anger that came from having his authority challenged by someone he considered beneath his notice. Chief, with all due respect, we're facing a mission-critical deadline, and you want to waste time listening to theories from someone who's never worked on anything more complex than changing oil filters. This is exactly the kind of distraction we can't afford right now. Morrison nodded in agreement, his voice carrying the conviction of someone defending established order. Vasquez means well, but she doesn't have the experience or training to diagnose complex electrical problems. We should stick with proven diagnostic procedures rather than chasing theories that probably won't lead anywhere productive. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable with the confrontation but remained silent, his expression suggesting he was torn between loyalty to his colleagues and curiosity about Elena's ideas. The tension in the bay had shifted from frustration with the tank to conflict over how to proceed, and Elena realized that her moment of opportunity might also be her last chance to prove herself worthy of respect. Thompson's voice cut through the disagreement with the authority of someone who had made her decision. Sergeant Webb, I appreciate your concerns about time management and resource allocation, but we're not succeeding with our current approach. If Specialist Vasquez has insights that might help us solve this problem, I want to hear them. That's not a request, it's an order. Elena felt the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. Everything she had learned through years of study and observation, all the knowledge she had accumulated while being dismissed and ignored, would now be tested against the reality of mechanical systems and the skepticism of colleagues who had never taken her seriously. The tank sat silent and imposing, waiting to reveal whether her theories matched the complex reality of its systems. The afternoon sun slanted through the bay's windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor as Elena prepared to explain her diagnosis of a problem that had confounded experienced mechanics for weeks. She knew that success would change everything about how she was perceived and treated, while failure would confirm every doubt her colleagues had ever expressed about her capabilities. The moment balanced on the edge of transformation, and Elena felt the familiar mix of confidence and terror that accompanied every significant challenge she had ever faced. The tank waited, silent and broken, holding secrets that would soon determine whether Elena Vasquez would remain the woman who cleaned tools and fetched parts, or become the mechanic who solved the unsolvable problem in the time it took others to read the diagnostic manual. The bay fell quiet except for the distant hum of ventilation fans and the soft sound of Elena's boots on concrete as she moved toward the machine that would either vindicate years of silent expertise or confirm her colleagues' assessment of her limitations. Time seemed to slow as Elena approached the electrical distribution box, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was attempting to prove. Thompson watched with the expression of someone prepared to evaluate evidence objectively, while Webb's face carried the skeptical certainty of someone confident that this exercise would only confirm his long-held opinions about Elena's place in the hierarchy. Morrison and Rodriguez flanked their sergeant, their expressions mixing curiosity with loyalty to established authority. Elena opened the electrical distribution box with practiced movements, her fingers tracing connections and components with the familiarity of someone who had studied every schematic and memorized every specification. The box contained dozens of bus bars, junction points, and protective devices, all designed to distribute electrical power throughout the tank's complex systems safely and efficiently. To untrained eyes, it would appear impossibly complex, but Elena saw patterns and relationships that told a story of how electrons flowed through copper and steel to bring the massive machine to life. "The main power distribution starts here," Elena explained, her voice gaining confidence as she moved into technical territory where her knowledge was unassailable. "Current flows from the alternator through the main bus bar to these secondary distribution points, which feed the various subsystems throughout the tank. The hydraulic system draws power through this branch, the turret systems through this one, and the electronics through these smaller feeds." Thompson nodded, following Elena's explanation with the attention of someone who understood complex systems. "I'm familiar with the basic layout, but explain how your theory accounts for the symptoms we're experiencing. How does an intermittent connection create the specific problems we've been seeing?" Elena pointed to a section of the main bus bar that looked identical to every other section to the untrained eye. "If there's a stress crack right here, it would affect current flow to the hydraulic and turret systems, while leaving the basic electronics unaffected. When the system is static, there's enough conductivity through the crack to maintain normal voltage readings. But when these systems draw heavy current, the resistance through the crack would cause voltage drops that affect downstream components unpredictably." Webb's expression remained skeptical, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "Even if such a crack existed, which is highly unlikely given the quality of these components, it would show obvious signs of thermal damage from the increased resistance heating. We've inspected every surface of every bus bar in this box." Elena had anticipated this objection and was ready with her response. "Not necessarily. If the crack is small enough and only affects the system under specific load conditions, the thermal effects might be too subtle to detect with visual inspection. The heating would be localized and brief, not enough to cause obvious discoloration, but sufficient to affect electrical performance." Morrison's confidence seemed to waver slightly. "But our diagnostic equipment would detect voltage variations if they were significant enough to affect system performance. We've been monitoring every circuit while running the systems through their complete operational cycles." Elena's response carried the quiet authority of someone who had thought through every aspect of the problem. The voltage variations would be intermittent and might not coincide with your monitoring periods. A crack that opens and closes with thermal expansion or mechanical stress would create problems that appear random but actually follow patterns related to operating conditions and environmental factors. Thompson studied the bus bar Elena had indicated, her expression thoughtful. So you're suggesting that we need to monitor the system under load, while looking for thermal signatures that might indicate increased resistance at this specific location. That's an interesting approach, but as Sergeant Webb pointed out, we don't have thermal imaging equipment readily available. Elena felt her opportunity slipping away, but refused to give up without exhausting every possibility. We might not need sophisticated thermal imaging. Even a simple infrared thermometer could detect temperature differences if we knew where to look and when to look for them. The key would be timing the measurements to coincide with the high current draws that would make the problem visible. Webb shook his head with renewed confidence. Vasquez, you're describing a diagnostic approach that requires precise timing, specialized equipment, and interpretation of subtle thermal variations. Even if your theory was correct, which remains highly doubtful, we don't have the time or resources to implement such a complex testing protocol. Elena felt frustration building as she watched her opportunity dissolve into the same pattern of dismissal and delay that had characterized every attempt she had made to contribute meaningful solutions. The tank's problems were real, her diagnosis was correct, and the solution was achievable. But the barriers of hierarchy and prejudice seemed insurmountable even when facing mission-critical deadlines. Thompson raised her hand to stop the developing argument, her expression indicating she was weighing factors beyond the immediate technical discussion. Let me ask a different question. Vasquez, if your theory is correct, how long would it take to confirm the diagnosis and implement a repair? Are we talking about hours, days, or weeks of work? Elena felt a surge of hope as the conversation shifted from whether her theory was worth considering to how it might be implemented practically. If I'm right about the location and nature of the problem, visual confirmation would take maybe 15 minutes with proper lighting and magnification. The actual repair would depend on whether we can access the damaged section without removing the entire bus bar assembly. Morrison looked skeptical but interested despite himself. And if the crack is where you think it is, what kind of repair are we looking at? Are we talking about replacing the entire electrical distribution box or something more manageable? Elena had spent weeks thinking about this exact question, had researched repair procedures, and studied technical manuals to understand the full scope of what would be required. If the crack is small and localized, we might be able to clean it thoroughly and apply a proper electrical joint compound to restore conductivity. If it's more extensive, we'd need to remove the affected section and install a bypass connection or splice in a replacement segment. Webb's expression suggested he was looking for flaws in Elena's reasoning. You're describing procedures that require precise electrical work and testing to ensure proper connections. Those aren't tasks for someone without specialized training and certification in high-voltage electrical systems. Elena met his gaze directly, her voice carrying quiet confidence. I have the training and certification for electrical work on armored vehicles. I completed the Advanced Electrical Systems course at Aberdeen Proving Ground last year, though I haven't had many opportunities to apply that training in my current position. The admission hung in the air like a revelation, and Elena could see Thompson's expression shift as she realized that Elena's background included qualifications that hadn't been reflected in her work assignments. The discovery added new dimensions to the conversation and raised questions about how Elena's skills had been utilized during her time at Fort Blackstone. Thompson's voice carried new interest and perhaps a hint of concern. Vasquez, your personnel file doesn't indicate advanced electrical training. Are you saying you have qualifications that haven't been properly documented or utilized in your current assignments? Elena felt the conversation moving into territory that might have implications beyond the immediate problem with the tank. Her additional training had been completed during leave time using her own educational benefits, and she had never been given opportunities to demonstrate those skills in her official duties. The disconnect between her qualifications and her work assignments reflected broader issues with how the military utilized personnel, particularly women, in traditionally male fields. I completed the training on my own time because I wanted to expand my capabilities and provide more value to the unit, Elena explained carefully. One provided copies of my certificates to the previous maintenance chief, but there may not have been opportunities to update my official qualification records or modify my duty assignments. Webb's expression had shifted from skepticism to something approaching alarm. Are you telling us that you've had advanced electrical training that we didn't know about while we've been struggling with electrical problems for 3 weeks? Why didn't you speak up sooner if you had relevant expertise? Elena felt the familiar frustration of being criticized for problems she hadn't created. I tried to offer suggestions several times, but I was told to focus on my assigned duties and leave the technical work to qualified personnel. I didn't think it would be appropriate to insist on involvement in tasks I wasn't officially assigned to perform. Morrison's voice carried a note of confusion. But if you knew you had the training to work on these systems, why didn't you push harder to get involved when the problems started? We've been spinning our wheels for weeks when you might have been able to help. Elena struggled to find words that would explain the complex dynamics that had kept her on the periphery without sounding like she was making excuses or blaming her colleagues. The truth was that women in technical military specialties often faced challenges that men rarely experienced or understood, barriers that were subtle but persistent and difficult to address through official channels. Thompson seemed to understand the implications without requiring detailed explanations. I think we need to focus on the immediate problem rather than exploring personnel management issues that can be addressed later. Vasquez, I want you to explain exactly what you propose to do and how long you think it would take to either confirm or disprove your theory. Elena felt the conversation returning to technical ground where she could demonstrate competence rather than navigate complex social and political issues. I need about 10 minutes to remove the access panels and position adequate lighting to examine the suspect bus bar segment thoroughly. If I find visual evidence of cracking, I can confirm the diagnosis and begin planning the repair approach. If I don't find anything, we can move on to other possibilities without having lost significant time. Webb's resistance seemed to be weakening as the scope of Elena's proposal became clear. 10 minutes for visual inspection isn't unreasonable, but I want to be clear that if you don't find obvious evidence of the problem you're describing, we return to established diagnostic procedures without further delay. Elena nodded, understanding that she was being given one opportunity to prove herself, and that failure would likely eliminate any future chances to contribute technical solutions. I understand the conditions. 10 minutes to find visual evidence of the crack I believe is causing our problems. Thompson made the command decision with the authority of someone who understood that conventional approaches had already failed. Proceed with the inspection, Vasquez. Webb, Rodriguez, Morrison, I want you to observe and assist as needed. If she finds what she's looking for, we implement her repair plan. If not, we continue with the manufacturer support option. Elena felt her hands steady as she gathered the tools and lighting equipment needed for a thorough inspection of the electrical distribution box. The moment she had been preparing for throughout her career was finally at hand. The opportunity to prove that her knowledge and instincts were valuable assets rather than inconvenient complications. The tank waited silently, its secrets about to be revealed through careful observation and systematic analysis. The bay fell quiet except for the soft sounds of Elena's preparation, tools being arranged with practiced efficiency, lighting being positioned to eliminate shadows and provide clear visibility of every surface and connection. Webb, Morrison, and Rodriguez positioned themselves where they could observe her work without interfering, their expressions mixing skepticism with curiosity about what she might discover. Elena began her inspection with the methodical approach that had always defined her work, examining each component and connection with the thorough attention to detail that separated competent mechanics from parts replacers. Her hands moved with practiced confidence, her eyes trained to detect the subtle variations that might indicate problems invisible to casual observation. The first several minutes yielded nothing more than confirmation that the electrical distribution box had been properly maintained and showed no obvious signs of damage or wear. Elena felt a moment of doubt as she considered the possibility that her theory might be wrong, that weeks of observation and analysis might have led her to an incorrect conclusion about the nature of the tank's problems. Then her flashlight beam caught something that made her pause, a barely visible line across one section of the main bus bar that looked different from the surrounding metal. Elena adjusted her position and the angle of the light, trying to determine whether she was seeing an actual crack or simply a reflection or shadow that created the illusion of damage. "I need a magnifying glass," Elena said quietly, her voice carrying the controlled excitement of someone who might have found exactly what she was looking for. "There's something here that needs closer examination." Thompson handed her a magnifying glass from the tool cabinet, and Elena focused the lens on the section of bus bar that had caught her attention. Through the magnification, the thin line resolved into an unmistakable crack running across about half the width of the conductor, exactly where she had predicted it would be based on her analysis of the symptoms. "Found it," Elena announced, her voice steady despite the vindication she felt. Stress crack across approximately 60% of the main bus bar cross-section, located exactly where thermal expansion and mechanical vibration would create maximum stress concentration. Webb moved closer to examine Elena's discovery, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise as he confirmed what she had found. "I'll be damned," he said quietly. "There's definitely a crack there, and it's exactly where you said it would be. How did you know to look in that specific location?" Elena felt a moment of professional satisfaction as she realized her colleagues were finally seeing evidence of her analytical capabilities. The symptoms pointed to a problem in the main distribution system that affected high current loads while leaving low current systems unaffected. This location represents the logical stress concentration point based on the mechanical design and thermal cycling patterns. Morrison studied the crack through the magnifying glass, his voice carrying new respect. "The crack is so thin it's almost invisible without magnification, and it's positioned where normal inspection procedures wouldn't detect it unless you knew exactly where to look. No wonder we missed it during our standard diagnostic routines." Rodriguez's examination confirmed Elena's discovery, and his tone reflected a mixture of admiration and chagrin. She was right about everything. The location, the nature of the problem, even the reason why our standard tests didn't detect it. This explains every symptom we've been seeing for the past 3 weeks. Thompson studied the crack with the expression of someone evaluating both the immediate problem and its broader implications. "Outstanding diagnostic work, Vasquez. Now let's talk about the repair. What's your assessment of what needs to be done to restore this system to operational status?" Elena felt confidence building as the conversation moved into areas where her expertise was now recognized and valued. "The crack hasn't propagated through the entire conductor cross-section, so we don't need to replace the bus bar. I can clean the crack thoroughly, apply proper electrical joint compound, and secure the repair with appropriate mechanical reinforcement." Webb's attitude had transformed completely, his voice now carrying the respect of one professional for another. "How long do you estimate for the complete repair, and what kind of testing will be required to ensure the fix is reliable under operational conditions?" Elena had been mentally rehearsing this repair procedure for weeks, calculating every step and timing requirement. 30 minutes for preparation and cleaning, maybe 45 minutes for the actual repair and reinforcement, then 15 minutes for initial testing and verification. Total time from start to operational status should be less than 2 hours. Morrison's voice carried genuine enthusiasm. 2 hours to fix a problem that's had us stumped for 3 weeks. If you can pull this off, Vasquez, you'll be a hero around here. Elena felt the weight of expectation, but also the confidence that came from finally being given the opportunity to demonstrate capabilities she had always possessed. I'd like to get started immediately if that's acceptable to everyone. The sooner we begin the repair, the sooner we can get this tank back to operational status. Thompson made the decision with the authority of someone who understood that conventional solutions had failed and unconventional expertise might be their only path to success. Proceed with the repair, Vasquez. This is your operation now. Webb, Rodriguez, Morrison, you'll assist as directed and observe the procedures for future reference. Elena felt the shift in dynamics like a physical change in the air around her. For the first time since arriving at Fort Blackstone, she was being treated as the technical expert rather than the support personnel, and her colleagues were preparing to learn from her rather than instruct her. The transformation felt surreal. After years of being dismissed, but she pushed aside the emotional impact to focus on the technical challenges ahead. The repair would require precision, patience, and the kind of systematic approach that separated successful mechanics from those who relied on luck and repetition. Elena began by gathering the specialized tools and materials needed for electrical conductor repair, each item selected based on specific requirements for working with high-current busbar systems. The joint compound alone required careful selection to ensure compatibility with the copper alloy construction and the thermal cycling the connection would experience during normal operation. First step is complete cleaning of the crack and surrounding area, Elena explained as she began the preparation process. Any contamination or oxidation will compromise the repair integrity and could cause the problem to recur under operational stress. Her movements were deliberate and confident, each action performed with the precision of someone who understood both the theoretical principles and practical requirements of electrical system repair. Webb watched her work with the attention of someone discovering that expertise came in forms he hadn't previously recognized. The cleaning procedure you're using is more thorough than what we typically do for busbar maintenance. Is that level of preparation really necessary for this type of repair? Elena continued her methodical cleaning while explaining her approach. Busbar repairs require perfect conductivity and mechanical integrity to handle the current loads these systems carry. Any imperfection in the repair becomes a potential failure point that could cause cascading problems throughout the electrical system. She paused to examine her progress through the magnifying glass before continuing with increasingly fine abrasive compounds. Rodriguez positioned himself where he could observe the repair process closely, his expression indicating genuine interest in learning techniques he hadn't encountered before. The joint compound you're preparing looks different from the standard electrical paste we normally use. What makes it appropriate for this specific application? Elena appreciated the technical questions because they demonstrated that her colleagues were treating her as a knowledgeable professional rather than someone who had stumbled onto a lucky guess. This compound is formulated specifically for high current applications where thermal cycling and mechanical stress are concerns. It maintains conductivity and flexibility through temperature ranges that would cause standard compounds to crack or lose adhesion. Morrison had retrieved additional lighting equipment to ensure Elena had optimal visibility for the delicate work ahead. I have to admit, watching you work is educational. The systematic approach and attention to detail explains why you spotted problems we missed. Do you always work with this level of precision? Elena felt a moment of validation as she realized her colleagues were finally seeing the expertise she had always brought to her work, even when it wasn't formally recognized or utilized. Precision is necessary when working with complex systems where small errors can cause major failures. I've learned that taking time to do things correctly the first time saves considerable effort compared to fixing problems caused by shortcuts. The crack cleaning process took nearly 20 minutes of careful work with progressively finer abrasives and solvents, each step designed to remove contaminants without enlarging the crack or damaging surrounding material. Elena worked with the focused concentration of someone who understood that the next 30 minutes would determine whether her reputation would be built on competence or destroyed by overconfidence. Thompson observed the preparation process with the interest of someone learning techniques that might be applicable to future problems. Vasquez, your approach to this repair suggests you've done similar work before. Have you encountered cracked bus bars in previous assignments, or is this knowledge from your advanced training? Elena continued her precise work while considering how to answer the question honestly, without highlighting the fact that her skills had been underutilized for years. The advanced electrical course covered bus bar repair procedures extensively, and I've studied similar cases in technical literature to understand best practices for conductor restoration. This is my first opportunity to apply that knowledge to an actual repair situation. Webb's assistance had evolved from skeptical observation to genuine collaboration as he anticipated Elena's needs and provided tools and materials before she requested them. The theoretical knowledge is obviously solid, but the practical execution requires confidence and skill that usually comes from experience. You're working like someone who's done this type of repair many times before. Elena felt the compliment, but remained focused on the technical requirements of the task at hand. Good theoretical understanding combined with careful attention to detail can substitute for extensive hands-on experience, especially when the stakes are high enough to demand absolute precision. She examined the cleaned crack surface one final time before moving to the next phase of the repair process. The application of joint compound required steady hands and perfect timing to ensure proper flow into the crack while avoiding excess material that could interfere with electrical connections. Elena worked with deliberate movements, applying just enough compound to fill the crack completely while maintaining the smooth surface profile necessary for optimal current flow. Rodriguez watched the compound application with fascination. The way you're controlling the material flow suggests this requires considerable skill to do correctly. How do you know when you've applied exactly the right amount without creating problems elsewhere? Elena paused in her work to ensure Rodriguez could see the technique clearly. The compound needs to penetrate completely into the crack to restore electrical continuity, but excess material can create high spots that concentrate stress or interfere with mechanical connections. The key is applying steady pressure while allowing the material to flow naturally into the void. Morrison had been timing the repair process and seemed impressed by Elena's efficiency. You're moving through these procedures faster than I expected, while maintaining what looks like perfect technique. Is this repair going to take less time than your original estimate? Elena considered the question while continuing her careful application of compound material. The preparation took slightly longer than expected because the crack was deeper than initially apparent, but the actual repair is proceeding smoothly. I should still be well within the 2-hour time frame unless we encounter unexpected complications. Thompson had been taking notes on Elena's procedures, documenting techniques that could be incorporated into future training programs. The systematic approach you're using could be valuable for training other mechanics in advanced electrical repair procedures. Have you considered developing formal documentation of these techniques? Elena felt surprise at the suggestion that her methods might be worth documenting and sharing with others. Throughout her career, Her approaches had been viewed as unnecessarily complicated or overly cautious rather than examples of best practices worth emulating. I've never been asked to document repair procedures before, but I'd be willing to share knowledge that might help other mechanics handle similar problems more effectively. The joint compound curing process required precise timing and environmental control to achieve optimal strength and conductivity. Elena monitored temperature and humidity while making minor adjustments to ensure ideal conditions for the chemical reactions that would restore the bus bar's integrity. Her attention to environmental factors impressed her colleagues, who were beginning to understand that successful repairs required consideration of variables they had never noticed. Webb had been studying Elena's documentation of the repair process, comparing her notes to standard technical manual procedures. Your approach includes several steps that aren't mentioned in the official repair procedures. Are these modifications based on your advanced training, or have you developed improvements to the standard techniques? Elena appreciated the question because it acknowledged that her methods might represent genuine improvements rather than unnecessary complications. Some of the additional steps come from advanced training that covers techniques not included in basic manuals. Others are modifications I've developed based on understanding how environmental factors and material properties affect repair outcomes. Rodriguez was examining the repaired section of bus bar with obvious admiration for the quality of Elena's work. The repair looks completely invisible now that the compound has set properly. Without knowing where the crack was located, I don't think anyone could identify the repair area. That level of finish suggests real craftsmanship. Elena felt professional satisfaction as she realized her work was being evaluated on its technical merits rather than dismissed because of preconceptions about her capabilities. A proper electrical repair should be invisible and should perform as well as the original material. If the repair is obvious or creates weak points, then the technique needs improvement. Morrison had been calculating the time elapsed since Elena began the repair process. We're at about 90 minutes total time, which puts you ahead of your original schedule. Are we ready to begin testing the repair to verify that it's restored the system to operational status? Elena nodded while gathering the equipment needed for comprehensive testing of the repaired electrical system. The repair is complete and the compound has cured sufficiently for initial testing. We'll start with low current verification to ensure proper conductivity, then gradually increase loads to confirm the repair can handle operational requirements. Thompson positioned herself where she could observe both the testing procedures and Elena's interpretation of the results. What specific tests will confirm that the repair has solved the original problem and restored the tank to fully operational status? Elena had planned the testing sequence to provide definitive proof that her diagnosis and repair were correct, while ensuring the safety of personnel and equipment. We'll begin with resistance measurements across the repaired section to verify conductivity, then energize individual systems while monitoring for voltage drops or instability. Finally, we'll run the complete system through operational cycles while monitoring all parameters. The initial resistance measurements confirmed that Elena's repair had restored electrical continuity to values within normal specifications. The readings showed no indication of the high resistance that had caused the original intermittent failures, and the uniformity of measurements across multiple test points suggested the repair was both complete and stable. Webb operated the test equipment while Elena directed the measurement procedures, their collaboration now characterized by mutual respect and shared focus on technical excellence. Resistance readings are well within normal parameters across all test points. The repair appears to have completely eliminated the high resistance condition that was causing our problems. Elena felt cautious optimism as the testing progressed through increasingly complex scenarios, without revealing any residual problems. Resistance measurements are encouraging, but we need to verify performance under actual load conditions to ensure the repair will hold up during normal operations. Rodriguez had energized the tank's basic electrical systems and was monitoring voltage stability while Elena directed systematic testing of individual components. All systems are showing normal voltage levels with no fluctuations or instability. Whatever was causing the intermittent problems seems to be completely resolved. Elena guided the testing through progressively higher current loads, each step designed to stress the repaired connection while providing early warning of any developing problems. The hydraulic system energized smoothly, the turret electronics functioned normally, and all auxiliary systems operated within specifications without the random failures that had characterized the tank's behavior for weeks. Morrison was running the tank's self-diagnostic routines while monitoring system performance indicators. Every diagnostic test is coming back green across all systems. No fault codes, no performance warnings, no indications of any residual problems. This tank is testing better than it has since it arrived in the maintenance bay. Elena felt the satisfaction of successful problem-solving, combined with relief that her diagnosis and repair had proven correct under rigorous testing. The testing results confirmed that the cracked bus bar was indeed the root cause of all the intermittent problems we've been experiencing. The repair has restored normal electrical system performance. Thompson had been documenting the entire repair and testing process for official records and future training reference. Outstanding work, Vasquez. You've successfully diagnosed and repaired a problem that stumped experienced mechanics for 3 weeks, and you've done it in less time than originally estimated, with results that exceed our expectations. Elena felt the magnitude of what had just occurred settling over her like a transformative weight. She had proven her technical competence beyond any possible doubt, demonstrated problem-solving abilities that her colleagues had never suspected. She possessed and restored a critical piece of equipment to operational status, when failure would have had serious consequences for mission readiness. Webb's attitude toward Elena had undergone a complete transformation, his voice now carrying the respect of one professional acknowledging another's superior expertise. Vasquez, I owe you an apology for doubting your abilities and for not recognizing your qualifications sooner. Your diagnostic skills and repair techniques are clearly at a level I hadn't encountered before. Elena appreciated the acknowledgement, but was more interested in moving forward constructively than dwelling on past conflicts. The important thing is that we solved the problem and got the tank back to operational status. Going forward, I hope we can work together more effectively by utilizing everyone's skills and knowledge appropriately. Rodriguez had completed the final systems checkout and was preparing to declare the tank ready for return to service. All systems are functioning normally and the tank is ready for operational deployment. The repair appears to be completely successful with no residual issues or concerns. Elena felt a moment of professional triumph as she realized she had not only solved a complex technical problem, but had also demonstrated capabilities that would change how she was perceived and utilized in future assignments. The transformation from dismissed support personnel to recognized technical expert had occurred in the space of a few hours, but the implications would reshape her entire career trajectory. Morrison was already thinking about the broader implications of Elena's success. Chief Thompson, given Vasquez's demonstrated expertise in electrical systems and her ability to solve problems others couldn't, shouldn't her duty assignments be modified to better utilize her advanced qualifications? Thompson nodded with the expression of someone who had already been considering exactly that question. You're absolutely right, Morrison. Vasquez's qualifications and demonstrated abilities clearly indicate she should be performing more advanced technical work rather than basic support functions. That's a personnel management issue we'll be addressing immediately. Elena felt hope building as she realized that her success might lead to opportunities she had been seeking throughout her military career. I appreciate the recognition, Chief Thompson. I've always wanted to contribute at a higher technical level, and to help solve the kinds of complex problems we face today. Webb had been examining Elena's documentation of the repair procedures with increasing interest. The techniques you used and the systematic approach you followed represent knowledge that could benefit our entire maintenance operation. Would you be willing to share this expertise through formal training programs? Elena felt excitement at the prospect of being asked to teach, skills she had developed through years of study and observation. I'd be honored to help develop training programs that could improve our collective ability to handle complex electrical problems. There's always more to learn, and sharing knowledge benefits everyone. The afternoon sun was beginning to cast longer shadows across the maintenance bay as the implications of Elena's success continued to unfold. What had begun as a desperate attempt to solve an intractable problem had evolved into a demonstration of expertise that would reshape relationships, duty assignments, and career trajectories for everyone involved. Thompson gathered the maintenance team for a brief discussion of immediate next steps and longer-term implications. The tank will be returned to operational status immediately and delivered to the training squadron as scheduled. Vasquez, I want to see you in my office after we complete the paperwork so we can discuss your reassignment to more appropriate duties. Elena felt the satisfaction of vindication, combined with anticipation of new opportunities that would finally allow her to utilize her full range of capabilities. The woman who had been relegated to cleaning tools and organizing equipment was about to become a recognized technical expert with responsibilities commensurate with her qualifications and demonstrated abilities. Rodriguez was completing the final documentation required to return the tank to service, his entries reflecting the successful resolution of problems that had threatened mission readiness. The official record will show that Specialist Vasquez identified and repaired a stress crack in the main electrical distribution system, restoring the vehicle to fully operational status in approximately 2 hours. Elena realized that her name would now be associated with successful problem-solving rather than menial support tasks, a change that would influence how she was perceived by colleagues throughout the base. The transformation from invisible support personnel to recognized technical expert represented a fundamental shift in her professional identity and career prospects. Morrison had been reflecting on the day's events with the expression of someone whose assumptions had been challenged and corrected. I have to admit, this experience has taught me that expertise doesn't always come in the forms we expect. Vasquez saw problems we missed and solved challenges we couldn't handle because we didn't recognize her qualifications. Elena appreciated the acknowledgement, but was more focused on the future than the past. The important lesson is that effective teams utilize all available expertise, regardless of where it comes from or what form it takes. Good ideas and technical solutions can come from unexpected sources if we're willing to listen and evaluate them objectively. Webb nodded with the conviction of someone whose perspective had been permanently altered by the day's events. You're absolutely right. From now on, I'll be more careful about evaluating people's contributions based on their actual capabilities rather than my assumptions about their roles or backgrounds. Thompson was already planning the personnel changes that would reflect Elena's demonstrated qualifications. Vasquez will be reassigned to Advanced Electrical Systems Specialist effective immediately, with responsibilities for complex diagnostic work and technical training development. Her expertise is clearly being wasted in basic support functions. Elena felt the weight of new responsibilities settling on her shoulders, but it was a welcome burden that represented the recognition and opportunity she had been seeking throughout her career. I'm ready to take on more advanced responsibilities and to help improve our overall technical capabilities. This kind of work is what I've always wanted to do. The maintenance bay had been transformed from a place of frustration and failed attempts into a scene of successful problem-solving and professional growth. The tank that had represented an insurmountable challenge now stood as evidence of what could be accomplished when expertise was recognized and properly utilized, regardless of its source. Rodriguez completed the final systems check and signed. Off on the tank's return to operational status. Vehicle is ready for immediate deployment to training operations. All systems functioning normally with no residual issues or concerns. The repair appears to be completely successful. Elena looked at the tank that had been the catalyst for her professional transformation, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation for the challenges that lay ahead. She had proven that her knowledge and skills were valuable assets that could solve real problems and contribute to mission success when given the opportunity. Morrison began organizing tools and equipment with the efficiency of someone who understood that successful completion of one task simply prepared the team for the next challenge. This has been an educational day in more ways than one. I've learned new technical procedures and gained a better understanding of how to evaluate people's capabilities more accurately. Elena felt gratitude for colleagues who had been willing to acknowledge their mistakes and adapt their attitudes based on evidence rather than maintaining positions that had proven incorrect. The best part about solving technical problems is that success creates opportunities for everyone to learn and improve their capabilities. Webb was documenting Elena's repair procedures for inclusion in the unit's technical reference library. These techniques should be preserved and shared so other mechanics can benefit from your expertise. The systematic approach you used could prevent similar problems from becoming major issues in the future. Elena appreciated the recognition that her methods represented genuine improvements rather than unnecessary complications. I'd be happy to help develop training materials that could improve our collective ability to handle complex electrical problems. Sharing knowledge benefits everyone and strengthens the entire maintenance operation. Thompson had completed the official paperwork documenting the successful repair and was preparing to brief higher headquarters on the resolution of what had been a significant concern. The colonel will be pleased to hear that the deadline will be met and that we've identified and resolved systemic issues that could have affected other vehicles as well. Elena realized that her success had implications beyond the immediate problem, potentially preventing similar failures throughout the fleet and demonstrating the value of thorough diagnostic procedures and advanced repair techniques. Understanding the root cause of this problem should help us prevent similar issues from developing in other vehicles and improve our overall maintenance effectiveness. The transformation of Elena's professional status from support personnel to technical expert had occurred in the span of a single afternoon, but the implications would reshape her career trajectory and influence how she was perceived and utilized for years to come. The woman who had been dismissed and ignored had proven herself indispensable through competence, determination, and the courage to persist despite repeated discouragement. Rodriguez gathered his tools with the satisfaction of someone who had witnessed exceptional performance and learned valuable lessons about recognizing expertise in unexpected places. Today has been a reminder that good ideas and technical solutions can come from anyone if we're willing to listen and evaluate them fairly. Elena felt the day's events settling into perspective as a turning point that would define her future military career. She had demonstrated that persistence, competence, and courage could overcome institutional barriers and transform professional relationships when circumstances created opportunities for truth to emerge. Morrison completed his documentation with careful attention to details that would help future mechanics understand both the technical procedures and the diagnostic approach that had led to successful problem resolution. The record should reflect not just what was done, but how the problem was identified and why the solution worked so well. Elena looked forward to new challenges that would allow her to apply her full range of capabilities to complex problems. That required both theoretical knowledge and practical expertise. The transformation from invisible support worker to recognized technical leader represented the fulfillment of career aspirations that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. The maintenance bay had become a place of vindication and transformation. where expertise had finally been recognized and properly utilized to achieve success that had seemed unattainable through conventional approaches. The tank's repair represented more than restored operational capability. It symbolized the power of persistence and the importance of recognizing valuable contributions, regardless of their source. Thompson prepared to escort Elena to the administrative discussion that would formalize her new responsibilities and career trajectory. Your success today has demonstrated capabilities that need to be properly utilized and developed. The conversation we're about to have will determine how we can best employ your expertise for maximum benefit to the unit and your own professional development. Elena felt anticipation mixed with satisfaction as she prepared to discuss opportunities that would finally allow her to contribute at a level commensurate with her qualifications and demonstrated abilities. The woman who had been relegated to the margins was about to become central to her unit's technical capabilities and future success. The administrative office felt different when Elena entered it 3 hours after completing the tank repair that had transformed her from overlooked support staff to recognized technical expert. Chief Warrant Officer Thompson gestured for her to take a seat across from the desk where Elena's personnel file lay open, its contents now being viewed through an entirely different lens than during previous performance evaluations. Thompson studied Elena with the expression of someone recalibrating fundamental assumptions about capability and potential. Vasquez, today's events have raised important questions about how we've been utilizing your qualifications and whether your current duty assignment reflects your actual value to this unit. I've been reviewing your file, and there are significant discrepancies between your documented training and your work assignments. Elena felt nervous anticipation as she realized this conversation would determine whether her success would lead to meaningful change or simply return to the status quo once the immediate crisis had passed. I've always been willing to take on more challenging technical work, but opportunities haven't been available in my current position. Thompson leaned back in her chair with the thoughtful expression of someone weighing complex personnel decisions. The advanced electrical system certification you mentioned isn't reflected anywhere in your official qualification records. How is it possible that you completed specialized training without it being documented in your personnel file? Elena had anticipated this question and prepared an honest explanation that wouldn't sound like criticism of previous supervisors. I completed the training during personal leave using my educational benefits, and I provided documentation to my previous supervisor. There may have been administrative delays in updating my official records, or the training might not have been considered relevant to my assigned duties at the time. Thompson made notes while considering the implications of Elena's explanation. So you invested your own time and educational benefits to gain qualifications that could benefit the unit, but those qualifications were never officially recognized or utilized in your work assignments. That represents a significant failure in personnel management. Elena chose her words carefully to avoid seeming critical while acknowledging the reality of her situation. I understood that duty assignments are based on unit needs and available positions, rather than individual preferences or qualifications. I've tried to perform my assigned duties effectively while remaining ready for opportunities to contribute at a higher level. Thompson's expression suggested she was beginning to understand the broader implications of Elena's situation. Your advanced training, combined with today's demonstration of diagnostic and repair expertise, indicates you should be working at a much higher technical level. The question is how to correct this situation appropriately and ensure your capabilities are properly utilized going forward. Elena felt hope building as the conversation moved toward concrete discussions of new opportunities rather than remaining focused on past oversights. I'm prepared to take on any technical responsibilities that would benefit the unit and allow me to apply my training more effectively. Complex electrical problems, training development, advanced diagnostic procedures, whatever would be most valuable. Thompson nodded while reviewing Elena's complete training record with renewed attention to qualifications that had been overlooked or undervalued. Your electrical system certification qualifies you for technical specialist positions that carry significantly more responsibility and advancement potential than your current assignment. The question is whether we have immediate openings that match your capabilities. Elena realized this was her opportunity to advocate for the kind of work she had always wanted to do. Today's repair demonstrated that complex electrical problems require specialized knowledge and systematic approaches that aren't covered in basic maintenance training. There might be value in developing advanced diagnostic capabilities within the unit rather than relying exclusively on outside specialists. Thompson made additional notes while considering Elena's suggestion. That's an interesting proposal. We've had several cases recently where electrical problems exceeded our internal capabilities and required expensive contractor support or depot-level maintenance. Having advanced electrical expertise within the unit could provide significant operational and cost benefits. Elena felt excitement as she realized her success might create opportunities not just for herself, but for broader improvements in the unit's technical capabilities. I'd be willing to help develop advanced electrical diagnostic procedures and train other mechanics in specialized techniques. Building internal expertise would improve our overall maintenance effectiveness. Thompson closed Elena's personnel file and leaned forward with the expression of someone making important decisions. Effective immediately, you're being reassigned. From general maintenance support to electrical systems specialist with responsibility for complex diagnostic work, advanced repairs, and technical training development. This comes with promotion to sergeant and assignment to the technical advisory section. Elena felt the magnitude of the change settling over her like a transformation that exceeded her most optimistic expectations. Thank you for the opportunity, Chief. I'm committed to proving that this assignment will benefit the unit and improve our technical capabilities significantly. Thompson smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had solved multiple problems simultaneously. Your success today demonstrated that we haven't been utilizing our personnel effectively. This reassignment corrects that situation while providing the unit with advanced capabilities we've been lacking. It's a beneficial change for everyone involved. Elena realized that her persistence through years of being overlooked had finally led to recognition and opportunity that would reshape her entire career trajectory. I appreciate the confidence you're showing in my abilities. I won't disappoint you or the unit. Thompson gathered the paperwork that would formalize Elena's promotion and reassignment. The promotion orders will be processed immediately, and your new duties will begin tomorrow morning. You'll be working directly with me on technical issues that require advanced expertise, and you'll have authority to implement diagnostic procedures and training programs as needed. Elena felt the weight of new responsibilities, combined with excitement about finally being able to apply her full range of capabilities to meaningful work. I'm ready to start immediately and to help solve whatever technical challenges the unit is facing. The conversation concluded with Elena signing documents that formalized her transformation from support personnel to technical specialist, a change that reflected both her demonstrated competence and the unit's recognition that expertise had been underutilized due to administrative oversights and unconscious bias. Elena left Thompson's office with promotion orders in hand and a profound sense that justice had finally been served through merit and demonstrated capability. The woman who had been cleaning tools and organizing equipment that morning was now an official technical expert with authority to solve complex problems and develop training programs. The news of Elena's promotion spread through the maintenance section with the speed that accompanies dramatic reversals of fortune. Webb, Rodriguez, and Morrison received the announcement with expressions that mixed genuine pleasure for Elena's success with embarrassment about their previous treatment of her capabilities. Webb approached Elena as she gathered her personal items from the support section workspace she was leaving behind. "Sergeant Vasquez, I want to formally congratulate you on a well-deserved promotion and to apologize for not recognizing your qualifications sooner. Your success today has been educational for all of us." Elena appreciated the acknowledgement, but was more interested in building positive working relationships going forward than dwelling on past conflicts. "Thank you, Sergeant Webb. I'm looking forward to working with the entire team more effectively now that my role better matches my qualifications and training." Rodriguez joined the conversation with obvious admiration for Elena's rapid transformation from overlooked support staff to promoted technical specialist. "The way you diagnosed and repaired that tank problem was impressive enough, but having it lead to immediate promotion and reassignment shows that good work really does get recognized eventually." Elena felt satisfaction at the validation, but remained focused on future opportunities rather than past grievances. "The important thing is that we solved a critical problem and demonstrated that the unit has more technical capability than we realized. Going forward, we can build on that success to handle even more complex challenges." Morrison had been reflecting on the day's events with the expression of someone whose assumptions had been fundamentally challenged. "Your success has made me realize that I need to be more careful about evaluating people's capabilities based on their actual qualifications rather than my preconceptions about their roles." Elena nodded with understanding for colleagues who were processing the implications of dramatic changes in their working relationships. "Everyone's learning from this experience. The key is using what we've learned to work together more effectively and solve problems better in the future." The maintenance bay had been transformed from a place of frustration and failed attempts into a symbol of successful problem-solving and professional growth. The tank that had represented an insurmountable challenge now stood as evidence of what could be accomplished when expertise was properly recognized and utilized. Elena's new workspace in the technical section reflected her elevated status within the maintenance hierarchy. Instead of organizing tools for others to use, she now had access to advanced diagnostic equipment and authority to implement repair procedures based on her specialized knowledge and training. Chief Thompson introduced Elena to her new responsibilities with the enthusiasm of someone who had solved a persistent personnel problem while gaining valuable technical capabilities. "Your primary duties will include advanced electrical diagnostics, complex repair procedures, and development of training programs that can improve the entire section's capabilities." Elena felt excitement at the prospect of work that would challenge her abilities and allow her to contribute at a level commensurate with her qualifications. "I'm particularly interested in developing diagnostic procedures that can prevent problems like today's tank issue from becoming major maintenance events." Thompson nodded with approval for Elena's proactive approach to her new responsibilities. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. Prevention is always more effective than reaction, and your ability to identify subtle problems before they become critical failures could save significant time and resources." Elena began organizing her new workspace with the systematic approach that characterized all her professional activities. Advanced test equipment, technical manuals, and diagnostic computers were arranged for maximum efficiency, while maintaining the precise organization that enabled complex work to proceed smoothly. The afternoon brought the first test of Elena's new authority, when a different tank arrived with electrical problems that seemed similar to the morning's successful repair. Webb and his team had attempted initial diagnosis but requested Elena's assistance when standard procedures failed to identify the root cause. Elena approached the new problem with confidence, tempered by recognition that each challenge required fresh analysis rather than assumption that previous solutions would automatically apply. "Let's start with a complete system evaluation to understand what we're dealing with before jumping to conclusions based on today's earlier success." The diagnostic process revealed problems that were superficially similar to the morning's cracked bus bar, but actually stemmed from different causes that required entirely different repair approaches. Elena's systematic analysis identified corroded connections in the auxiliary power distribution system, a problem that would have been missed by mechanics focusing exclusively on bus bar integrity. Webb observed Elena's diagnostic process with genuine interest in learning techniques that could improve his own troubleshooting capabilities. Your approach to problem analysis is more thorough than what we typically use. The systematic evaluation of all possibilities before focusing on specific areas seems to catch problems we might miss with standard procedures, Elena appreciated. The opportunity to demonstrate that her morning success hadn't been luck, but rather the result of systematic knowledge and careful analysis. Complex systems require comprehensive evaluation because problems often interact in ways that aren't obvious from examining individual components. Understanding the relationships between systems helps identify root causes more effectively. Rodriguez assisted with Elena's diagnostic procedures while learning techniques that weren't covered in standard maintenance training. The way you're using multiple diagnostic approaches simultaneously provides much more complete information than our normal step-by-step troubleshooting procedures. Elena felt satisfaction in being able to share knowledge that could improve the entire team's effectiveness. Advanced diagnostic techniques take more time initially, but often save significant effort by identifying problems accurately on the first attempt rather than through trial and error replacement of components. The repair of the second tanks. Electrical problems proceeded smoothly under Elena's direction, confirming that her expertise extended beyond the specific case that had led to her promotion. The systematic approach and advanced techniques she employed resulted in faster problem resolution and more reliable repairs than traditional methods. Morrison documented Elena's repair procedures for inclusion in the unit's technical reference. Materials. The techniques you're using should be preserved and shared so other mechanics can benefit from your expertise. These approaches could prevent similar problems from becoming major maintenance issues. Elena felt pride in being asked to contribute to the unit's technical knowledge base rather than simply following procedures developed by others. I'd be happy to help develop training materials that could improve our collective ability to handle complex electrical problems. Sharing knowledge strengthens the entire maintenance operation. Thompson observed Elena's second successful repair with the satisfaction of someone whose personnel decisions had been validated by immediate results. Your performance today confirms that your promotion and reassignment were appropriate and beneficial for the unit. You're already contributing at a level that justifies the confidence we've placed in your abilities. Elena felt gratitude for the opportunity to prove herself through meaningful work that utilized her full range of capabilities. Thank you for giving me the chance to contribute at this level, Chief. This is the kind of work I've always wanted to do, and I'm committed to proving that your decision was correct. The day concluded with Elena established in her new role as the unit's electrical systems specialist, a position that reflected both her demonstrated competence and the organization's recognition that expertise had been underutilized due to administrative oversight and unconscious bias about women's capabilities in technical fields. Elena's transformation from overlooked support staff to promoted technical expert had occurred in a single day, but the implications would reshape her career trajectory and influence how the unit approached complex maintenance challenges for years to come. Her success demonstrated that persistence, competence, and courage could overcome institutional barriers when circumstances created opportunities for truth to emerge. The maintenance section had gained not just a qualified electrical specialist, but also a more nuanced understanding of how to evaluate and utilize personnel effectively regardless of gender or previous role assignments. Elena's vindication had educated her colleagues about the dangers of assumptions and the value of recognizing expertise wherever it might be found. Webb approached Elena at the end, of the workday with the expression of someone who had learned important lessons about leadership and personnel evaluation. Sergeant Vasquez, today has been educational for me in ways that extend beyond technical procedures. I've learned that good leadership requires recognizing and utilizing people's actual capabilities rather than making assumptions based on superficial factors. Elena appreciated the acknowledgement while focusing on building positive working relationships for the future. The most important thing is that we work together effectively to solve problems and accomplish our mission. Everyone has something to contribute if we're willing to listen and evaluate ideas objectively. Rodriguez gathered his tools with obvious respect for Elena's rapid rise from support staff to technical leader. Your success today has been inspiring and educational. You've shown that persistence and competence can overcome obstacles and that expertise comes in forms we might not always recognize immediately. Elena felt satisfaction in being seen as an example of positive change rather than just someone who had gotten lucky with a difficult repair. The key is never giving up on your goals and always being ready to demonstrate your capabilities when opportunities arise. Success requires both preparation and persistence. Morrison completed his documentation of the day's events with careful attention to lessons that could benefit future maintenance operations. Today has been a reminder that effective teams utilize all available expertise and that good ideas can come from anyone if we're willing to listen and evaluate them fairly. Elena looked forward to new challenges that would allow her to apply her technical expertise to complex problems while helping other mechanics develop advanced capabilities. I'm excited about the opportunities ahead and the chance to contribute to our collective success through meaningful technical work. The maintenance bay had been transformed from a place of frustration and limited opportunities into an environment where expertise was recognized and properly utilized regardless of its source. Elena's vindication had created ripple effects that would influence personnel management, technical training, and problem-solving approaches throughout the organization. Thompson concluded the day by reviewing the official documentation of Elena's promotion and reassignment, ensuring that her advanced qualifications would be properly reflected in all future personnel decisions. Your success today has highlighted systemic issues in how we evaluate and utilize personnel. The changes we're implementing will help ensure that similar oversights don't occur in the future. Elena felt pride in having contributed to positive organizational change that would benefit other qualified personnel who might otherwise be overlooked or underutilized. I'm honored to have been part of improvements that will help the unit operate more effectively and provide better opportunities for everyone to contribute their expertise. The tank that had been the catalyst for Elena's transformation sat ready for operational deployment, its successful repair symbolizing the power of persistence, competence, and the courage to trust one's expertise even when others express doubt. Elena's journey from dismissed support staff to recognized technical expert represented vindication for everyone who had ever felt their capabilities were undervalued or overlooked. As Elena prepared to leave the maintenance facility that evening, she reflected on a day that had transformed her professional life in ways that seemed impossible just hours earlier. The woman who had arrived that morning to clean tools and organize equipment was departing as a promoted sergeant with authority to solve complex technical problems and develop training programs that would benefit the entire unit. The sunset cast long shadows across Fort Blackstone as Elena walked toward her quarters, promotion orders in hand and a profound sense that justice had finally been served through demonstrated competence and institutional recognition of expertise that had been present all along but never properly acknowledged or utilized. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.